Improving yourself isn't a switch that you flip at one moment, it's a dial that you turn. The first step in starting to turn that dial is just to have an intention of what you want and then just putting awareness on where you're at. Hello everybody, how's it going? It's good to see you. Today we're following up on last week's video. I'm going to tell you in a second here how I did with my week, all the ways I did okay, all the ways I messed up, and kind of how I feel about it and what I learned. But first, let's just recap what's going on here. So last week we talked about Benjamin Franklin and his list of 13 virtues that he used to kind of keep himself on track in his life. It was a practice for him. He'd start at the beginning of this list of virtues he wanted to work on. He'd spend a week on each one, actually marking in a journal every time he felt like he didn't live up to his what he aspired to live up to, and he'd go down the list 1 week at a time, 13 weeks, get to the end, and then start over from the beginning. I said I was going to start from the first one, temperance, and go through the list and do this 1 week at a time myself. However, right after I made that video, I kind of realized that it's 2025 and, 13-week cycle, it may be a little long. I wanted to consolidate this list and also kind of curate it a little bit more specifically to my own intentions, what I want to work on for myself. I did consolidate it with a little help from AI, from ChatGPT, and we consolidated the list of 13 virtues and a 13-week cycle down to 5 weeks. Let me pull this over real quick. So here's what we boiled it down to: discipline, order, diligence, considerate communication and action, serenity and humility. So the one I started with was the self-discipline one. And the description I have for this is focuses on controlling bodily appetites and impulses, from mindful eating and drinking to exercising restraint in personal desire. So that's what I was doing this week. If you're interested in self-improvement, I feel like a really good way to start is doing something like this, where you just identify a few things that you want to work on. Whether it's bad habits you want to change, good habits you want to make, virtues you want to aspire to, whatever it is, just identifying them clearly is the only way to start. By the way, in case you're wondering why I am back in here instead of at the laundromat, there's just too many unpredictable sounds and interruptions and chaos going on out there. It was just easier to come back here to make the video. I still did my laundry though. All right, so how did I do this week? Starting again with a focus on self-discipline. We're talking about controlling bodily appetites and impulses, from mindful eating and drinking to exercising restraint in personal desires. I feel like this is a really good place to start. I like that this is the first one on the list because what you put in your body really has a huge impact on coloring your perception of everything else, right? Whether it be, food, the types of food you're eating, the portions of food you're eating. It could be other substances that are changing your perception, whether you're taking illicit drugs or prescription drugs, or even things like nicotine and caffeine. All of these things create a foundation for how you're making contact with your life. So this is really important stuff. And as I was saying last week, I've been pretty out of whack with this lately. Okay, so let's start with the THC microdosing thing that I had mentioned last week that I had been experimenting with. I owe you guys an entire video on this topic, like what I was doing, what I was thinking, why I was doing it, and what my experience was. But for the sake of this video, and just to cut a long story short, if you've been following this channel, you may know that I'm very interested in psychedelics and psychedelic therapies. And in my reading about all that stuff, I came across this microdosing THC article. And so I decided I wanted to try it. This was a few months back, maybe 3 months ago. And so I started doing it. And what microdosing is when you're taking a dose of a psychoactive substance, but the dose is so low that it's subperceptual, right? So you're not actually feeling any psychoactive effects from it, but it's supposed to be effective more subconsciously. So I started doing this, and there are actually a lot of positive things that I have to report about it. Again, I'll do that at another time. But I found that over time I started getting to the dose that I kind of started to land on was one that wasn't quite subperceptual, right? Where I was feeling it a little bit. Now, one thing about me and marijuana or THC is that I don't enjoy being high on it. Even as somebody who used to be a hardcore addict, weed isn't something that I like being high on. It makes me paranoid. I don't like it. So I wasn't really tempted to like keep going up on the dose or anything, but I noticed that it wasn't quite subperceptual, and I was kind of enjoying this little sort of like a barely buzz that I guess you could call it. And I just realized that continuing to do that wasn't something that was ultimately benefiting me or moving me in a direction that I really wanted to be going in. And although, as I said, there were some benefits to it initially, as I continued with it, I could see some negative consequences actually accumulating that bleed into some of the other self-discipline things that I wanted to talk about. Mainly that it was affecting my appetite. Ever since I got out of prison, I've been generally eating pretty healthy, but you know, I am human and I do tend to overeat at times and indulge in junk food. I was noticing that the THC was making it more difficult than I would like to resist the overeating and the junk food, right? And I found myself eating more, you know, giving in more often. All that's just to say that since the video I posted last week where I first mentioned this and I said I was going to work on it, I completely stopped doing any of the microdosing or taking any THC at all. I haven't done it at all this week, and it's taken my appetite a little bit longer to catch up, I think. So I've still had kind of an appetite, and I did mess up eating out a little bit. I don't think I overate very much this week. I did mark, I was kind of like keeping track of it, writing down each day, like if I had done well or not. And I ended up going out with a friend a few times and eating out, but I kind of maybe overate a little bit. But the most important thing about all of that is that I was putting awareness on it. And I feel like just the intention of doing this thing that we're talking about, where we're focusing 1 week at a time on these things that we're trying to work on, I feel like, you know, just putting awareness on it is a huge deal. As I talked about last week, self-improvement is not a momentary decision. It's a practice, right? Improving yourself isn't a switch that you flip at one moment. It's a dial that you turn, and it takes time to turn that dial. And I feel like the first step in starting to turn that dial is just to have an intention of what you want or where you want to be, where you want to get to, and then just putting awareness on where you're at. And I feel like putting awareness on this week was huge. Even though like the improvement didn't dramatically happen as I wanted it to, the awareness on it was huge. And I feel like it's already started to push me in the right direction. Now, as far as this week by week thing goes, and to go back to what Thomas Jefferson did as well, it's not that he would, you know, focus on a virtue 1 week, and then when he moved on to the next one, it was like completely drop everything on that last one and, you know, go back to whatever. We're off the hook with that one and we're moved on to the next one. No, it's a practice that continues, and the intention of putting focus on it each week is exactly that, to shine awareness on where you're at and just put awareness on how you can improve. And then when you move on to the next one, we're not dropping the previous one. The awareness on each week is continuing to stoke the fires of that improvement as we go along. And when we get back to it again, hopefully that fire's still going and we can stoke it up some more. So that's the idea. So I feel like this was a hugely successful week. The other thing I mentioned last week was the nicotine. I was hitting that vape. As soon as I finished that video last week, I threw away the vape. Again, a friend that I hang out with smokes a vape, and I did hit her vape throughout the week. So not entirely perfect there either, but I did drop the nicotine that I have for myself. I did get a pack of Zins after I threw away the vape, and so I used that a little bit, but I like barely touched that, and I don't think I even need it. It's still sitting up in the closet right now. I think I'm just gonna throw that away right after I finish this video and just be done with it, and hopefully next time I'm hanging out with my friend, I'm not reaching for her vape. I would like to cut down on my caffeine intake though. That's something that I also, just shining awareness this week made me realize that I do, although I don't drink a ton of caffeine, I drink more than I should, and I do want to cut down on that. It doesn't do for me what I want it to do for me. So, all right, so thank you for sticking with me through all that. By the way, I think these videos are more for me than anything else because I know these aren't like super view intensive. Like they don't cultivate a whole lot of views on YouTube, and I understand why, because like who the hell cares about like what I'm doing for my own self-improvement? But if you guys are following this, then that's super cool. There is like a core audience that is here, and I'm making these videos for me and for you. And you know, I'll get back to the like more higher view count videos later, but for now I'm like need to focus on myself, and that's what this is all about. This week, starting today, we're switching from self-discipline to order. And what the description on this one is emphasizes wise management of resources and maintaining an organized, orderly environment in both one's affairs and surroundings. I am so excited for this one. I love this one. If you've been following this channel, you know that I'm totally into minimalism since I got out of prison. But I'm very excited this week to go through all my stuff and minimalize more and get everything just dialed into the way I want it in my personal space and with my personal possessions. I'm so stoked to attack this week. At the same time, I'm very excited to put this focus on order as far as my affairs go. To me, this one means getting back more on a routine, making sure that the time I'm spending isn't superfluous. It's not accidental. I'm not accidentally throwing time here and there. I really need to work on, you know, my time on YouTube. That's something that I've been really bad with lately, getting stuck just doom scrolling on YouTube. I don't really use other social media, but YouTube, I have to admit, gets me. I've been doom scrolling and stuck on like the Drake Kendrick stuff. Like, so I know it's been like over for a while now. The Super Bowl already happened, but I'm just like, I just love like overdoing it with just hearing about Kendrick and Drake. It's so stupid. So I just want to put like a real intention this week on doing things when I'm supposed to, not procrastinating, and being more intentional about how I'm going to spend my time, or at least putting awareness on when I'm not spending my time intentionally. I think this video is probably way longer than I expected it to be. I wanted it to be quick and short and sweet, but if you're still watching, thank you for being here. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one. Here we go. Let's get it this week.